Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, giving you the edge you need to get into the colleges of your dreams. With your host, Steve Schwartz. That's me. Today we're talking with Roger Dooley. How are you doing today, Roger?
Just great, Steve.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, I'm really excited to speak with you today because you're behind College Confidential. You're actually one of the co-founders. Could you tell us a little bit about what College Confidential is exactly and how you got into that?
Yeah, it's been a long work in the making. It is the busiest site for college-bound students and parents, and most of the time we do more traffic than even College Board does, for example. So it's a very busy website, and it is largely built around forums where students and parents crowdsource information about colleges, about getting in, about SAT questions, just you name it. There is probably a subforum for, we've got individual forums for hundreds of individual schools, as well as many, many topical forums ranging from sort of broad topics like college admissions down to more specialized topics like musical theater. In fact, the musical theater area itself has many smaller subgroups devoted to individual musical theater schools because they're so different in their requirements. And it began in 2001 when I connected with a couple of college admissions experts. At that point, I was more of a web and business guy and also a parent of two kids who had gone through the college process. Both processes were somewhat different, so I had an exposure to it. And one thing I realized was that back then there was very little good information on the web, and often, and the one situation that hasn't changed that much is that college counselors tend to have limited range of information and limited time to spend with students. Often for a college-bound student who's doing well in school, they really just sort of treat it as, hey, you're doing great, keep up the good work, and move on to serious problems like substance abuse or parental problems or truism or many of the other things they have to deal with. So the initial concept was to set up a site full of free information for both students and parents, particularly for those who wanted to go to school outside their geographic area or wanted to get into a more selective school. And that was another area where there was really not much information. When we began, there were maybe one or two books on the topic of elite college admissions, and there was just a lot of misinformation out there. I know that going through the process with my kids, we picked up a lot of misinformation along the way, and not that the outcomes would have been tremendously different, but you never know. And so one thing we want to do is get as much good information out there as possible. So we started with a lot of expert content. These would be articles about different aspects of the admission process, standardized testing, financial aid, and so on. But we also started a forum community at the same time. And as with most forum communities, it started off very small, but we grew it, and more people showed up, and eventually became really the tail wagging the dog, where now it gets probably 90+% of all the traffic to the site compared to the more static article portion of the site. And it's been great because we've really come into the age of user-generated information and content and the crowdsourced information. And I think it's important. People say, well, yeah, but man, you've got people answering questions who don't really know the answers. They're not experts themselves. But to me, it's a lot like Amazon reviews. Every person that posts an Amazon review is not necessarily a skilled book critic. But if you read a number of reviews of a particular book and look at not just the number of stars, but the way the person expressed themselves, what their depth of knowledge on the topic seems to be, and so on, you can get a pretty good idea of what the book is like and whether you might want to read it. And that's really what we strive for in College Confidential. No individual opinion is necessarily authoritative, but if you read a bunch of that content, you'll get some really good information and be able to draw your own conclusion. The site I'd add was sold. We sold the business in 2008 to a company called Hobson's, which is part of the Daily Mail Group. So I'm no longer involved in the ownership of the site, although I still consult for them.
Well, that's really interesting, Roger. It sounds like you provide a ton of useful information for students and parents and families who are applying to college. I want to focus on one thing you said, though, which is, how it's similar to Amazon reviews, kind of the idea of crowdsourcing information. And obviously, in any community that's open to the entire world, you're likely to get some misinformation, some rumors, people making posts that kind of stroke their own egos. So I'm wondering, how exactly are you able to help users filter quality discussion from, lies and misinformation? I mean, is there any sort of automatic filtering that goes on, or is it kind of like, let the buyer beware when it comes to reading the text of an individual post?
Well, what we find is that there is a sort of collaborative filtering that goes on where if somebody jumps in and posts something that is blatantly false or misleading, other members will jump in and correct that. And they'll provide perhaps their backup. And something else that you can do on College Confidential, as with many forum sites, is you can look at how long the person has been a member, the number of posts they have, and gauge how helpful they are, how knowledgeable they are that way. And so if you get somebody who showed up yesterday and posts something that is totally incorrect, and then several senior members come in with both excellent information and bringing their reputation with them, then the outcome is pretty clear. And we do moderate people who are spamming or just saying ridiculously stupid stuff continually. But by and large, it's more of a collaborative filtering process.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, especially a site of your volume, the amount of traffic that goes on there. I'm sure that anything that's blatantly false, kind of will get corrected pretty easily. I'm thinking of it almost similar to Wikipedia in a way.
Yes, we don't have the editing process that Wikipedia does, so there isn't somebody who can delete those posts other than our moderation staff. But the moderators will generally only delete content if it's spam or obscene or something like that, or if it's a member who is just posting junk and it has no redeeming qualities. But by and large, we rely on other members through their comments to identify what's right and what's wrong. And of course, with many things, sometimes there isn't a right or wrong. There's different sides to the story, and that's where having multiple voices can really bring out the nuances. So I think that's important too. People always ask, well, okay, is Columbia better than Yale or whatever? Well, there is no definitive answer to that question, and you may have some partisans from each side jump in and provide their opinions. You may have some more neutral people weigh in with their opinions, but ultimately what you hope to get from that isn't the answer that A is better than B, but rather what are the differences and why would one choose A over B? And that's really the important information, I think.
No, sure. A lot of questions are simply open-ended opinion questions, where people can debate, but there's not clearly a right or wrong, absolutely. I want to touch on one thing you said, which is related to, deleting content that's incorrect or false, or if someone's trolling, for example. But I'm wondering about, users, ability to delete their own content. Maybe they decided they revealed too much information about who they are and they want to remain anonymous, or they changed their mind about something. What are your thoughts on allowing users to delete or edit their old messages?
Well, we have a very narrow edit window. It's about 10 minutes or so, or 15. I'm not sure exactly where it's set right now. And that allows people to correct typos, or if they, hit post and they realize that, oh, gee, I put something in there I shouldn't have, or, it comes out looking weird, or whatever the reason might be, they can edit it right then. But they really are not, we don't permit editing after that, because what we've found through experience both on our forum and I've seen on other forums is that sometimes people will post something, they'll get a bunch of replies, and then they will delete or alter the content that they originally posted, and the replies won't make any sense, or they'll be they'll contradict the information, and it ends up being really confusing. And one thing that we've always tried to do is create an archive of useful information. Not that every thread. I mean, we've got probably millions of threads, and not every one is a classic full of great information. But what we do hope is that we can get a body of information so that if somebody is searching for an answer to a question, they can find it, even if somebody posted it a year or two ago. And when people can edit their own stuff, you end up with holes in threads. Like somebody goes back. I recall one situation that I encountered on a different forum where a disgruntled member had actually been an excellent contributor and put in a lot of good information in that forum. But then for whatever reason, they got angry and deleted everything. So you had all these threads out there that had key information that was missing, sort of the answers to the questions that you were trying to get. Those answers were not in there where they were supposed to be. So that was part of what informed our decision to say we don't really have a longer editing window. We will occasionally ourselves, at the request of a user, inadvertently they stuck something in like their social security number, which has happened, believe it or not, where somebody's pasting in some content from an application and they paste in their social. We have deleted those things. We've deleted things where people inadvertently post their full name or that sort of thing. But that's about the extent of it.
No, that actually makes a lot of sense now that I think about it. Obviously, you want to preserve that archive of information for future applicants. I mean, I myself, Googling from time to time, I will come across old college confidential threads, and there's just a wealth of information there. But it's also nice to know that you guys will, upon request, delete something if someone inadvertently reveals a little bit too much about themselves. Sometimes people, copy paste entire documents without giving enough forethought as to what those documents contain.
Right.
No, it's really great to know. Thanks, Roger. What's your opinion about those threads where people ask, what are my chances? So I'm kind of torn on them myself. Yeah,
they are a lot of fun. We were not expecting those. In the early days, that was not sort of one of our thoughts that, wow, we've got to have this as a focus or as a topic. We early on actually created a chances forum because there were so many questions along those lines. And so I think there's a hunger among students and occasionally parents to get a third-party opinion on whether they can get in or not. Of course, there are some caveats, just like those Amazon reviews. When somebody posts their stats and information and says, can I get into Harvard? There is no easy answer to that. I mean, they might, unless they have actually rather mediocre stats, they might get told, you really don't have much of a chance. But even if you have sterling stats and scores, it's still, not a random process, but it's very, very hard to predict. So you really can take it with a lot of faith. But where I think what it does do is provide some students with a reality check, because I know that I've seen students where they've been told by their teachers or their guidance counselor, you are an amazing student. You will get in everywhere you apply. You are just the best. And it isn't that they're trying to mislead that student. They just have not had much experience with the elite admissions process. And every year we see members who applied only to elite schools. They didn't apply to any safeties because they were so confident that they were going to get into one or more of the schools on their list. And that's a huge mistake, needless to say, but it happens every year. Thankfully, it isn't too common, but it does happen. And had those people posted a chances thread, they might have gotten some advice at least that, wow, your chances at all of these schools is quite low, or, you meet their criteria, but, assume that you're a 1 in 10 shot or something like that. And they might have had a more realistic application profile then and included some more ballpark schools and a safety.
No, I agree 110%. It's really nice to have that reality check, even if, again, it is simply the wisdom of crowds, let the buyer beware. But on the flip side for a second, I just want to point out that one thing I hear a lot from applicants is they talk with their guidance counselors, and their guidance counselors tell them not to shoot quite so high. And you're just going out there, posting your information or at least some details about yourself and getting some feedback as to maybe how impressive you actually are and how you could be shooting higher is another thing to think about.
Well, that's true. And you do get that as well, because often guidance counselors are familiar primarily with their in-state schools, perhaps the flagship state university, some of the regional campuses, maybe some private schools that are within 100 or 200 miles. And once they get outside of that, they really don't have that much familiarity. And I don't want to generalize. There's certainly some very well-informed guidance counselors and college counselors out there. But, often particularly in public high schools, you've got one counselor for 400 students, 500 students. And not only that, they don't just have college counseling responsibility. They've got all kinds of counseling responsibilities, many of which are sort of life or death situations. So it's unrealistic to expect them to provide really phenomenal college guidance. And some students do aim too low, or at least they don't apply to schools because they don't think they have a chance of getting in. And one thing that is true, sometimes those schools that are definitely more selective also have significantly better financial aid packages. So if you are, say, a student with a minority background or a lower socioeconomic status, you might be a slightly more attractive applicant to one of these schools, and you might get better financial aid than you would get at other schools. So there are some pluses to going for those reach schools, even if they're a long shot, because obviously, the Ivies, Stanford, MIT, Caltech, and so on, those are reach schools for just about everybody. I mean, even if you're the valedictorian and you've got fantastic SATs, they're still reach schools.
Oh, 100%, Roger. I really couldn't agree more with you there. I think that, just to echo what you said, the guidance counselors are often extremely overtaxed and they're working with a limited set of experience. And a lot of times, as you said, their counseling responsibilities extend far beyond simply college admissions to helping kids who are at risk of dropping out, and focused on those kids a lot of the time. So their frame of reference isn't always what you might want it to be. I agree. It's good to look outside and get some extra opinions.
Yeah, definitely. And again, the advice that you get when you post a chances thread, it's going to be variable. There's going to be some folks perhaps who overestimate your chances or underestimate you. And there's always this thing about College Confidential occasionally gets a reputation for having folks with, like these phenomenal scores and grades and activities and everything. And it's kind of intimidating to other people. And, even assuming those are real, which certainly many of them are, I mean, there are some extremely qualified folks who post to College Confidential. There could be some who inflate their stats. Who knows? But regardless, I think that having those multiple inputs, and we do have, our makeup is probably 85% students and 15% parents, roughly, and maybe a few other odd categories in there. We do have some college students who post, particularly students who perhaps were active CC members when they were in high school, and then they come back after they've been admitted to try and assist the next generation of high school students by providing information about their school or describing their experiences there or giving advice on how to get in and so on. So I know that's really valuable input, but we do have these parent members who stick around often after their kids get into college and because they learn so much along the way themselves. If they walked in the doors, so to speak, as a newbie parent to the college admissions process, after they've done it with one child or a couple of kids, and they've gone through the process and they've been on CC and been reading and participating and so on, they have developed a significant amount of expertise. And sometimes they will stick around and share that again with the next generation of newbies coming in the door. And that's really valuable advice because often these people have a real perspective. They can give you that firsthand account of what their kid experienced going through that same process, what they experienced, and that's really valuable.
No, it's really nice when folks stick around. I guess they just, whether they're a former applicant or a parent, I guess they just got a little bit obsessed with the process and you amassed all that knowledge and wanted to continue talking about it, discussing, helping others. I think it's really great when folks stick around to help the next generation.
Right. Well, I think mentorship is actually a human characteristic. Maybe not everybody has it in equal amounts, but there is an innate human desire to mentor others. And I will get into the psychology of that because I'm not that familiar with it myself, but I have seen that, and it's also kind of age related, where when you get to that age where you think about mentoring, there's this sort of drive to do it. So that really encourages some of the parents to stick around. And I think that in general, looking at other communities, I've been a part of technical communities, for example, and there is definitely an arc that members go through where often they come in the door as a result of searching Google because they have a question, some kind of a technical question, if it's a technical forum, a college question, if it's college confidential, and they post that, and hopefully they get some replies and they find it useful, and then maybe a week or two later they post another question, and over time they begin participating in discussions rather than just posting questions as sort of a clueless newbie. They become more of an equal participant, and often after maybe a year or 2 years, they find that they know the answers to these newbie questions, and they begin answering them themselves. So it's not unique to College Confidential. That's something that happens in all kinds of forums, and not everybody sticks around. Some folks get their answer and leave. Some may stick around briefly and leave after that. But some percentage of the folks do enjoy participating in the discussions, and as their expertise grows, they turn from sort of newbie questioner to equal participant to a mentor themselves.
It's really nice to see that evolution, that cycle, and it's certainly something I experienced myself, starting off as a newbie back when I was applying to college, and now I've worked in education ever since, working with students, getting into applying to college. And there's something innate, I agree, where if you have the answer to something, you almost can't help wanting to share it because there are people out there who have questions related to that. So how can you sit there silently while people ask questions and not solve them when you can?
Right.
Really agree with you there. Also, one more thing just wanted to touch on is the selection bias related to those "what are my chances" threads. A lot of times, students get intimidated when they see all these impressive applicants providing information about themselves, shooting for top schools, and they think, wow, I'm nothing at all like that. You got to keep in mind there's many other applicants just like you out there who are in a same position. Maybe you're not shooting for an Ivy, but you're shooting for a tier or two below that. And everyone's just kind of sitting there quietly watching and lurking when they're all in it together. If only one of them would have the confidence and the courage to stand up and share their story as well. I'm telling applicants this all the time because they're always saying, this forum's not for me, it's only for the elite. And I'm saying that's not really true. It's for everyone.
Right. And I think the other part of that is if you look at many of the elite schools at, say, their average SAT or their average GPA, they're high, but keep in mind that there are applicants with perfect scores coming in, so that in order to produce that average, there are also quite a few students with less than perfect scores who bring that average down. So you've got both ends of the spectrum there. Now, some of those may be legacies or athletes or other special recruits, but nevertheless, it doesn't mean there's no hope, because it could be that the school is looking for somebody with that particular profile, whether it's geography or skills or interests or whatever.
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not just about the numbers for a lot of the applicants. A lot of folks get in with lower than the average numbers based on things like their essays, their extracurriculars, recommendation letters. It's not just test scores and GPA all the time.
Exactly.
I want to shift gears now, Roger, and move into my favorite part of the interview, which is the lightning round. I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions. You give me some rapid fire responses. Are you ready?
Oh, I suppose. We'll give it a try.
You could do it. What's your number one piece of advice for the college admissions process?
I think be realistic, aim high, but cover yourself with at least one safety that you would absolutely love to go to, and also some schools that are in your ballpark that you would love to go to. And the love to go to part is important because I see posts all the time from students that say, "Oh, I'm into my safety, but I really don't want to go there." That's not a safety if you really don't want to go there.
Oh, definitely. Good to apply to a range of schools, but make sure you want to actually go to them. Could you share with us one habit that you believe contributes to college admissions success?
Probably diligence in following up, in making sure that all your information is there. And hopefully schools are getting a little bit better about this since I've been in that mode. But I encountered with my kids schools that had either not received information or lost information, but had not communicated that well, and just all kinds of little misadventures that had there been stronger communication, could have been avoided.
Definitely. Couldn't agree with you more there. What's one online college admissions resource besides College Confidential that you absolutely love?
I've been out of the process for so long that it's been a while. I think that the College Board college search feature is not bad from the standpoint of being fairly comprehensive and having solid information. And so it's often a starting point for college search. I like College Confidential Supermatch better because it provides for a sort of fuzzy matching. In other words, it's not just a sieve where if you say, okay, I'm interested in schools in Texas, if a school that was absolutely perfect for you was 10 miles across the border in Oklahoma, you wouldn't see that school because you said Texas. Supermatch actually takes that sort of thing into account and provides some near matches rather than just treating it as a pure filtering process. But I think College Board, their various websites do have some good information.
No, actually, the Supermatch is a great feature considering the actual distance, not just state borders and boundaries.
Well, yeah, and also it will give you, if it fails to meet that criteria at all, and you can specify state. It's not just distance. You can specify criteria, but because you can assign importance to them, and because it never treats something as a complete exclusion, it'll show you schools and it'll show you what it didn't match on. So it'll say, okay, you're really interested in marine biology in a school with less than 5,000 students, et cetera, and I'll give you a list. And it'll show you that, okay, this one does not meet the criteria for location, but it's ranked third because everything else is so perfect about it. And the feedback that we've had has been really good. It's been, you found every school on my list plus a couple I hadn't thought of. And that second piece is what's really important. It's those couple that they hadn't known about or thought of that tool surfaced that really make me feel good about the process.
No, it's a wonderful feature, and we'll definitely link to it in the show notes. So I want to ask you, Roger, I know that you're not with College Confidential anymore, but I'm wondering, what's next for College Confidential and what's next for you?
Well, now I'm focused mainly on my writing and speaking. I write about marketing, and in particular using more of a neuroscience and psychology approach to marketing. And that's what I spend a lot of my time on. I still do spend some time working with the College Confidential website. I should know how to say that. As far as what's next there, I'm not really sure. We're seeing continued growth year on year. And I think that what I'd like to see is us reaching an ever larger portion of the student population, because right now we still we skew toward the elite and selective end of things. We've been able to broaden our base quite a bit. We've got forums for hundreds of schools, and we do get a lot of people who are asking about schools that are not either an Ivy or a UC or some of the other schools that folks obsess about. But I think that there's still room to improve there because often so many students believe that if they don't get into a particular school, if I don't get into Brown or if I don't get into an Ivy, then, gee, my life is over. I've failed as a student. When that is absolutely not the case. There are so many good schools out there where you can get a great education and have great professors and a great experience too, that by limiting yourself to a few schools at the top of the U.S. News list or something like that, it's really a big mistake. And so that's something that I've been trying to communicate back since founding College Confidential, and I would hope that we can continue to expand our reach into students who are looking at really a broad variety of schools.
No, definitely. It's not just about the Ivies, and I'll just give a plug for one book that I absolutely love about this is 40 Colleges That Change Lives, just helping folks look beyond the Ivies only.
Right. Yeah, that's a great book, and certainly one good resource for finding some schools that are not crazy difficult to get into, although some of them are even a little bit selective, but it's certainly another kind of list. And ideally, it'd be great if there were 10 or 20 books like that with different areas of focus and so on that would really surface many of the great schools out there. Because, obviously not every college is great. There are some that are pretty average and, they give you a degree and you take your classes. But there are certainly many like the ones listed in the Colleges That Change Lives book that really do a wonderful job.
Absolutely. Well, Roger, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, telling us all about College Confidential. Really appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure to be on the show, Steve. Thanks.
Thank you. Take care. There are a million books out there about applying to college, but it's hard to know which ones are worth buying and which are just a waste of time. When I was applying to college, I felt like most of them weren't really saying anything that I didn't already know. And a lot of the others were just plain boring. So I've put together a list of the best books I've read on the admissions process. I've got books on there about college essays, scholarships, and test prep. So check it out. It's at collegeadmissionstoolbox.com/books. Thanks for listening to College Admissions Toolbox. Head over to www.collegeadmissionstoolbox.com to get more free tools and resources that will help you get into the colleges of your dreams.